I guess you've noticed a few things a little different up here. In fact, we're in the center of this thing now because it's just amazing to me that we are not focused upon the one thing that is the one thing that we should be focused on. The altar of God. And today it's the altar of God that hosts the Lord's Supper. So we should be here. This is the focal point of the sanctuary. And who can tell me what the altar says? What? Do this in remembrance of me. You see, folks, that's what we should be doing. Do all of this in remembrance of Jesus Christ. I want to ask you a question. Have you ever climbed a tree when you were a kid? Tree Climbers International would like to help you regain that inner joy of childhood tree climbing. That leads us naturally to our text, where we encounter the patron saint of tree climbers and tree huggers, Saint Zaccheus. When you were a kid, the presence of a great tree with a lot of low branches is a certain invitation to climb up and see the world from a greater height. Of course, falling from that great height often leads us to the one of the first of childhood trips to the emergency room and a cast on a busted arm or leg for the elementary class to sign. Such a diversion, however, rarely becomes a deterrent for the determined child adventurer, as there will always be another tree beckoning to be scaled. Adults, on the other hand, usually have a more restrained approach to being up a tree. Usually being up in a tree means that we're stressed or at wit's end. As in, Timothy fell out of the tree and needed a $250 trip to the ER. Now I'm up a tree. But not every adult associates being in the branches with being out on a limb. There's an organization, in fact, called Tree Climbers International that promotes the sport of low-impact, high-safety tree climbing for adults using ropes and harnesses. I don't know if they'd have a harness big enough for me, but I would certainly be willing to try it. The group runs a tree climbing school in Atlanta, Georgia, where one can literally learn the ropes and get to climbing for fun and relaxation. It's the joy of being a kid again, while minimizing all the risk. We emphasize the word minimizing here, however, because trees are often unpredictable. As living branches, they are constantly changing. The branch that looks strong may have rotted underneath the bark. The bark may be waiting for that next strong gust of wind to finally bring up its holding on. Ropes or not, climbing a tree can be dangerous as well as fun, which makes it all the more exciting. We see the mixture of danger and excitement in the most famous tree climbing story in the Bible. Zaccheus, the patron saint of tree climbers, was, as the old Sunday school tells us, a wee little man. Or as the NRSV puts it in more measured adult terms, short in stature. Zaccheus was the chief tax collector, a local entrepreneur who employed other tax collectors to collect all the tolls, the tariffs, and the taxes in the local area. In case the town, in this case, it is Jericho. The tax collectors would change and charge the people whatever tax bill they wanted, as long as their Roman overseers got paid the appropriate share. So whatever was left over got pocketed by the tax collector as profit. And no one in that system would be profited more than a man like Zaccheus. It's no wonder tax collectors were among the most hated people in first century Israel. Kind of goes that way now, too, doesn't it? They were the ones who often left the fellow Judeans up a tree over their heavy taxes and shrinking incomes. Jesus, however, seemed to gravitate towards these nefarious entrepreneurs. Earlier in Luke's Gospel, the religious establishment repeatedly mocks Jesus for being a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Maybe that's why Zaccheus wants so desperately to see Jesus. The tax collector doesn't have any other friends, only enemies among the townspeople. Zaccheus wants to see Jesus so badly, in fact, that he ran ahead and climbed up a sycamore tree to see him because he was going to pass that way. First century readers would have understood that Zaccheus was really acting like a little kid. Running and climbing a tree were both considered to be undignified and an embarrassment to adult males in that culture. Ropes or no ropes. You can almost imagine the crowd snickering at the sight of the little weasel Zaccheus running and climbing like some scared little boy to get away and away from the crowd. It was an act that would have pushed him even lower on the social scale, even though he was now taller than the crowd that was all underneath the branches of the sycamore tree, which can grow to more of 100 feet in height. As Jesus came into town, he noticed Zaccheus there, up a tree, in more ways than one. For Zaccheus, and for many people who find themselves on the margin of society, being up and away from the crowd can be a safe refuge. Zaccheus might have taken his childhood action to the next level and built a treehouse up there where none of his enemies could get to him. Ultimately, however, living in the trees doesn't work. Ask Tarzan. Eventually, you'll have to come down, and when you do, it's better to have someone there to catch you. Jesus looked at Zaccheus hanging on a sycamore branch and said, Zaccheus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. Now, not only does Jesus do something completely different, Jesus invites himself to the tax collector's home. Another double social no-no. Jesus calls him down from being up a tree, out on a limb, and hanging on to life by his fingernails. In doing so, Jesus continues to be guilty as charged of hanging out with all the wrong people. Indeed, the crowd begins to grumble, saying, he's gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner. Well, actually, Jesus was acting more like a host than the guest, which was more often the case when Jesus came to dinner. Zaccheus had gone up a tree seeking Jesus, but it was Jesus who came seeking Zaccheus on his way to Jerusalem. The Son of God came to seek him out to save the lost, says Jesus. Showing up at the house of this tiny tax collector demonstrated to everyone in the crowd that those who were up in the tree in their lives were the ones that Jesus was and is seeking. Interestingly, the last statement of Jesus in this passage has mostly been often used to suggest that saving the lost is all about private and personal conversion, which results in getting someone's soul into heaven at death. What happens to Zaccheus, however, is a much more comprehensive kind of salvation. A salvation that comes to the whole house and results in a transformation, healing of the whole person in the present, not just the future. The salvation that Jesus often changes Zaccheus' life through and through. And as a result, it benefits those around him. The poor benefit from Zaccheus' change from greed to generosity, receiving half of the tax collector's possessions, which would have been very substantial. Those who have been defrauded by Zaccheus' corrupt actions will receive a fourfold restitution, making him suddenly solvent and secure again. When Zaccheus is saved, the whole community benefits. When the lost are found, the trees get shaken and everyone enjoys the fruit that comes from repentance. Jesus came looking for people who were up a tree. Indeed, we have all been up a tree ever since that day in the garden when our spiritual ancestors went up to a tree looking for something other than God in Genesis 3. Jesus has come to invite us down, to offer us new life, to live lives that reflect the kind of healing, wholeness, and salvation that His kingdom brings. And once we accept His invitation, then we are to invite others to lives that are firmly grounded in His grace. Who do you know that is up a tree now? Maybe it's a single mom in your neighborhood who's trying to hold down a job and care for a couple of kids. Maybe it's that elderly person who sits alone in church whom no one notices. Perhaps it's that guy at work who struggles with an addiction. Or the kid who has been abandoned by his parents. Chances are there are lots of people around us every day who are up a tree and need an invitation to come down. Can we be the church that follows Jesus' example and invite them to dinner, to a conversation, maybe even to a new way of life? Oh, it's still a major social faux pas to invite ourselves to dinner at their house. Only Jesus can get away with that. But every one of us has the opportunity to invest ourselves in someone else's life. Offering him or her the kind of grace and love that Jesus has offered us. And when we invest ourselves with others, that investment often translates to fruit that benefits the whole community. When the lost tree dwellers began to come down, we began to see the kingdom of God at hand. Now, in the town of Jericho today, I can tell you this because I've seen it. There stands a massive sycamore tree that the Palestinian guides tell us that's the real tree that Zaccheus climbed as Jesus approached. Whether it is or not, it really doesn't matter. It looks like a tree that would be fun to climb, but there's no place, and it's no place to live. Zaccheus came down and left the tree behind for a new life. Could we help others the same? You see, my friends, I want us to think wholeheartedly about what God is calling us to do. I've been kind of reminding you that it was your job to invite people to church, not the pastor's job. The pastor's job is to encourage you, to empower you, to involve you in stewardship of invitation. Well, Danny, you're talking stewardship, that means money, right? I said, no, it does not mean money. Stewardship means that we have all kinds of things that we're in charge of. We're in charge of our soul. We're in charge of who we are. We're in charge of who we invite. And if you don't invite, then who's going to come? So I want to remind you, encourage you, empower you, engulf you in the presence of Jesus Christ, to remind you that we are to follow. We are to invite people that are up a tree. And we all know people like that. We all know people that are up a tree. Because I've been there. I've been there and I thought, my gosh, I'll never see a ladder to get me down. I've told you this before, but I'm going to remind you again that big, huge live oak tree in the backyard of the Varsitys there, my granddaughter, Hannah, loves that tree, and every time she's here, she's climbing it. And I said, baby, be careful. You're getting up really high, and I'm just afraid you're going to fall and hurt something. Oh, Poppy, I've got this down. I've got this down. I know how to climb this tree. Oh, Hannah, please be careful. And then she says, I don't even need that ladder. You can take the ladder away. Okay. So I take it away. About 10 minutes later, I'm here, Poppy! Go out and see what she wants. She says, I think I need the ladder. You see, Jesus is the ladder to help us out of the tree. Jesus is the one that helps us step down and step out. You see, folks, it's not me. It's not you. It's all of us. We have to invite. We have to invite, invite, and invite. A dear friend of mine from another church that we've done a Bible school with over there at Day Spring, he and I were talking about Santa Fe and how Santa Fe has a mystique about it. You know, that Santa Fe has this whole image of being very closed, and no one can come in unless you fit the right mold. And that's kind of the way I kind of felt like it was here. We want people to join. Yes, we do. Oh, yeah. But you have to find that you're in the right mold. You can fit in with us, not we fit in with you. Folks, Christ accepts every one of us how we are and who we are. He doesn't care if we're red, black, maroon, or white. All he cares about is that we love him. So I want to invite you. If you're up a tree, let me bring you a ladder. And that ladder is Jesus Christ. Let me bring you a lifeline, which is our Lord Jesus Christ. Let me help you get the harness on to get you out of that tree. Because Jesus wants to be in your life. He's agreeing with me. That's amen. You see, it's all about us versus them. I was telling another friend of mine the other day about an Episcopalian bishop conference, and he wanted to see how much they were interested in being open to the world. Wanted to see where their heart lied. So he came dressed a couple of hours early in a homeless outfit. Ragged coat, torn shoes, torn, messed up hair, dressed as the least of these. You know, the ones that we don't want to roll down the window that far and hand them a man bag. You know, those ones there. That's the way he was dressed. And right before church started, he walked right down the center aisle and sat on the front row. Front row now! And the ushers are looking at themselves, and I can just see the ushers doing this. Oh, how do we get that guy from the front row? How are we going to escort him out? I don't know what we're going to do. You know, he's not the kind that we want to have exhibited when we have the bishop coming. The bishop coming, we want to be sure that everybody knows how good we are, how great we are, and we don't need that in our place. So one of the ushers got brave enough and walked down. And he said, "Sir, we have a very appropriate spot for you. And we'd like you to come and let us move you to the back of the church. We're saving this particular seat for our bishop." About that time, he pulled the wig off his head and laid it down, pulled off his coat. And under his coat, he was dressed as a bishop. He looked at the congregation and he said, "If you've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me." You see, folks, that's what we need to look at. Are we inviting the least of these to come be a part of these pews? I was in a meeting this week at the school in RJ1. Lovely place. You know, there's 1,153 students up there in that school. 1,153 students. It's like mass chaos. It's masses of humanity moving around. It's crazy. The school was designed for 1,200. They're almost at max capacity. And the principal and I were talking, and we were listening, and I told her, I said, "You know, I feel such a passion for these folks that are on free lunches and reduced price lunch." She said, "Well, Danny, let me just tell you, 51% of our school is on free lunch. 51%. I said, "Wow." I said, "How do they eat on the weekend?" She says, "We don't know. We don't know that they do." So I'm going to start praying about that. How we can make a difference in those kids' lives. And Brad and I were discussing about the backpack thing and all that. And I think that's a good way for us to do that. But you know what? I think a better way for us to do this is to every Saturday we invite those kids and their parents to come and have breakfast with us. We feed them every Saturday morning. They get at least one meal a day. One meal that we help serve them. I know you're looking at me like, "Oh don't ask me to do that. Don't ask me to be with those people. You've done it to the least of these. You've done it to me. So I want you to start praying about that. And see if we invite them to come on Saturday to eat, if we have a meal up here every Saturday, then you know we serve breakfast every Sunday. We already served breakfast. It's not a big deal for us. We could just invite them to come and eat again. And who knows? They might even stay for church. Or they might even stay for Sunday school. Or they might even stay for the 11 o'clock church. If we don't ask, they will never come. When I first came here, I saw this magnificent edifice of a place, and I thought, wow! Why aren't they coming? And I asked some of the leaders, I said, why did we build 3 fellowship halls? Well, we just kept thinking, if we build it, they will come. Well, they're built, and they're paid for, and they're not here. Why is that? I leave that question with you. Let us pray.